So as we move into our topic today, which is, as you can see, is all about colors and design. So I've got a friend, Ian Hutting. Most of you will know him, and for many years I've known Ian for 10 plus years, and he's always come up with these weird and wonderful slides, and he always says, oh, I have a secret person that does my slides, and we don't share, and this, and we try to get more and more information out of him, and he wouldn't share what his secret formula was for all his wonderful slides. And then all of a sudden Ian found a partner and the secrets were leaked. So here today, we are honored to be able to share Ian's secret graphic gnome with us all. And Luzonne has been able to join us, and she's, over the next 40 minutes or so, she's going to share some of the secrets on slide design and color and shape and font and all those good things. And I did mention, do not try take all these notes down, okay? You are not going to get them down. There is an ebook coming, which we'll drop into the chat at the end, and then you can download that and you'll have all the stuff there. So rather write down your ahas, write down your to-do list as we go through the next half an hour or so. So by way of introduction, let me just tell you a little bit about Luzonne. Luzonne is a freelance graphic designer based in Pretoria, with almost 20 years of experience. Not that you would think about that looking at her. Over the past years, Luzonne has found the inspiration and satisfaction by partnering with smaller companies. Developing strong relationships is the foundation of everything that she does. And I think that's one of the key things, because you can't do design without a deep relationship. So she does that both professionally and personally, and getting to know the heart of each company is key for her to help her achieve their potential and personality, and their unique character. And you can see Luzonne is something of a unique character. So when she's not tapping into a creative mojo, Luzonne is chilling at home with her super brainy, geeky husband, and I would tick that box, yes, and her 4 earthlings. Wonderful. 4 little offspring, and a side hustle, she's aspiring member of the Avengers. Well, there we go. Okay, so please welcome to your screens and to your minds, and maybe a little bit to your heart, Luzonne Mentz. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a little bit intimidating being here amongst all you very special people and professional speakers, which I am not. I can get very lost in imagery and design. So, I don't tend to go out because it's people-y out there. There's people, and having to talk to them, it's very intimidating to me. So bear with me and have some grace. If I say a lot, I'm sorry. That's why I have in the corner behind me is Shadow. She's my emotional support cat. So if you do see a creature stirring in the background, that is my Shadow. So what do? And I'm going to be talking about design and color today. And why am I dressed all bizarre? Other than this taps into who I really am, I'm living the brand of who I am. And I believe that everybody at their core is a skeleton. Our absolute essence of who we are is the skeleton. And that's your brand. Who are you underneath all the facades, all the imagery? Who are you at your absolute core? And that's your brand. And as you guys are speakers, you have to epitomize and embody your brand in a physical way every time you go out to represent yourself and speak to other people. And that's where branding comes in. Branding is where you are, your accoutrements, what you add onto the skeleton, your skin, your fashion sense, if I can put it that way. So branding is only a tool that represents your brand. So you can have as many beautiful logos as you want. If you're not authentic in who you are as your brand, your logo will mean nothing. Okay. So once you've identified who you are, your brand, your essence of what you want to communicate to people out there, your audience, your clients, whoever you're reaching out to, once you have established that, then you start adding. And one of the main things that we use, one of the tools that we use is color. And color can be international, where a color, it represents something that people internationally understand and comprehend, or it can be very cultural. Specific cultures have specific connotations to colors. So you guys are all international speakers. You need to keep that in mind when you go out to find your target market. I'm just going to pop in quickly and say, for example, in the Eastern world, red emphasizes luck. It embodies luck. Where in West Africa, red means being unlucky. So you really need to take into account who you're targeting, where you're going to be sending out your branding. That needs to guide you while still being authentic in who you are. So there's also brand standards out there. For example, tech companies. If you go and do a survey out there, a lot of tech companies choose blue. Why? Because we have a natural inference that blue means trust, professionalism, calmness. Okay, most people have that kind of connotation to the color blue. But you can have other colors, like, for example, I've used a lot of red and black. My branding shows passion. Okay, it shows energy. But it can also show elegance and sophistication. So choosing the colors that represent you as a brand is crucial. And color is not just as simple as Bruce said earlier, you know, you've got the primary colors and that's what you're stuck with and you can't move out of that. Color is extraordinarily complex. You have tints, you have hues, you have saturation. All of those add to the psychology of perception and how people perceive you. You can have red, and it could be a vibrant, bright, fire hydrant red, and that can show a lot of energy and passion. But you take that same red and you add black to it and you mute it down and you make it maroon. Suddenly you have a very elegant look. Suddenly it gives a completely different vibe. It suddenly becomes more formal versus this fire hydrant red. Okay, so keeping in mind all of those color combinations, all of those make such a huge difference in the psychology of the message that you want to bring across. Your brand personality needs to be embodied in the color. For example, we often associate gold with luxury and elegance. And silver, for example, which a lot of tech companies also use, is seen as futuristic and calm. So those type of colors need to be top of mind when you think of yourself and your brand, your skeleton. What are you adding to your skeleton to make sure that you are your authentic self, that when people look at your brand, the message is already subliminal, it's already there. They're already reading into it. Okay, the silver to me sounds very futuristic. It feels like it's very calm, and versus if you're, for example, communicating wellness, a health brand, for example, that silver is not going to go with that. You can add it maybe as a color, but people associated the earthy colors, the greens, the sand colors, that to them in general is associated with health. And there are industry standards for a reason, okay? So if everybody in the wellness industry is using shades and tones of greens and earthy colors, and suddenly you come in and you're using a completely different color, people are going to be a little bit confused. That said, I'm generalizing a lot. And from a graphic design perspective, if you know what the rules are, then you have scope to break the rules. Because you have to find that fine balance of standards that are out there in the industries, but because it's so cluttered, how do you stand out from your competitors? It's a really fine balance of trying to stand out versus fitting in. Consistency is extremely important. If you have chosen to have a specific brand look and feel, for example, you have chosen blues because your essence of what you're going to be communicating is knowledge. You want people to trust you. You want to have a calm presence out there. And that is generally what you are putting out there. And suddenly in one of your communiques that you put out there, you've got bright screaming canary yellow. You have a problem, because then there's no consistency across your branding. It makes people feel like, well, you haven't really committed to your brand. You're not being authentic to your brand. You're not sure what you're selling. And they won't be wrong, because you're not sure what you're selling. You need to be absolutely certain and committed to your brand, because this is something that's long-term. There are lots of trendy colors that come up. And tapping into that in certain aspects is a wonderful thing to do, but you have to think long-term. And if the color, for example, this year, every year Pantone comes out with a specific color, it's called peach fuzz. It's this lovely, it's this lovely pastel-y peach color. It's a beautiful color. But next year, we're going to have navy blue. And suddenly you're no longer trendy. You're no longer part of what is trending right now. So you have to think long-term as to be what will be lasting and still authentic for your brand. Keeping in mind, who are you targeting? Age makes a difference. Gender makes a difference. Culture makes a difference. Okay. So there are so many aspects that you have to draw in to be able to make sure that you have a full scope of what you're trying to communicate as you as a brand. Okay. And taste. If you've got a brand, you've thought this through, you have got your mission, your vision, your target group, you've thought all this through, and you know who you're going to do, and you've chosen a color, and it's navy blue. Test it. Send it to your colleagues out there, the people who are speakers with you, and say, this is my brand. This is the color I've chosen. This is my logo. What do you guys think? It's good to have feedback from peers, okay? Make sure that you have people on your side who can corroborate and say, that's amazing, or that doesn't make sense to me. I'm not sure what you're communicating. I know you, Bruce, you tend to do this, and suddenly you've got this color going there. It doesn't gel for me. Take that information and adapt before you commit and roll out on all the platforms that are available to you. And make sure when you choose your colors that you don't make mistakes. For example, if you're going out in Africa and you have a heart for the underprivileged, don't suddenly have a logo that is all gold and glitzy and shiny. Gold is associated with luxury and privilege. You're not going to be received by the underprivileged if this is the brand that you arrive and it's not consistent with your message that you're trying to give out there. In the document that I've given you quite a few examples of colors and brands that go with the colors, and it gives you a generalized vibe of the industries that go with that. For example, we often think of pink as being very feminine and very soft and very nurturing, and it can have aspects of all of that. But if you think of a retailer like Game, they've very successfully taken a very bright magenta pink and incorporated that into their branding. It doesn't come across as particularly feminine. What it comes across is hip and vibey and energetic. So don't fall into the stereotypes of pink only means feminine. Okay, it doesn't. If your crowd that you are trying to appeal to are young people, tap into colors that are hip and happening and vibrant versus pastels, for example. We have colors like blue. If you think of a lot of the banking institutions like Standard Bank, for example, their logo is blue. Why? Because it comes across as very professional, it comes across as very formal. You need to choose what represents authentically the spirit of your brand. So if you go and look in the document that Bruce will send to you at the end, I go into a lot more detail with that type of thing. There's too much information to go through that right now. And then what colors are out there and how do you utilize them? So a basic principle from a graphic design perspective, if you go and Google, you'll see the color wheel. Okay, the color wheel, you can spend hours and hours going into all the information with regards to color and how complex it can be. But if we start with just the basic foundational structure, we have red, we have blue, and we have yellow. If you take those colors and you start combining them, you start expanding that color wheel and you get more and more colors. So your primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. If you take red and yellow and you combine them, you get orange. Blue and yellow, you get green. Red and blue, you get purple. But then we get to the next tier, which is your tertiary colors, where you take green and blue and you mix them together and you get blue-green. So it's super complicated, and it's all these tiers that build up, and there's such a huge variety of colors out there. And then you add stuff like monochromatic colors, analogous colors, complementary, cross-complementary, triadic, tetradic. It gets complicated. So my advice would be, get yourself a graphic designer, let it be their headache. Okay, you tell them, I want this vibe, you come back and dazzle me. Okay, if that's not an option, then go out, do yourself a favor, go look at the color wheel, stick your finger out and say, oh, that really appeals to me, let's work from there. Okay, so it can be very complicated, but it's so much fun delving into all the colors and the richness and the complexity that there's in color, as well as spend time, if you are interested, and do some more research on the psychology behind color, because it is phenomenal how we are exposed from a young age to color and what they mean. And it has become so inherent in ourselves that, I mean, if you can think back to primary school, for some of that, it's many years ago. But you think of yellow. Yellow is a happy color. That's sunshine colors, okay? And if you think of black, it's dark, it's dreary, it's depressing, it's thunder. So innately, from little, we're already exposed to the psychology of color, and it becomes innate. So we probably all have a favorite color. Without conscious thought as to what that color is, we probably all have a favorite color. It would be interesting for yourself when you think about your branding to go, what is my favorite color and why? Just, let that percolate and think, do I incorporate that in my branding, or is that something personal and separate? But often, because your brand as a speaker, you are tapping into your innate interests, your innate love and passions. They're interlinked. So give it some space. Don't just necessarily go with what the industry is dictating. Take what is authentically you, because then you can embody it and live it in a much easier way, because you don't have to work at it. It's already there. It's already coming out. And then from a graphic design perspective, a lot of my clients will say, I've heard of RGB and I've heard about CMYK, and I've got this artwork. What do I do with it? I've sent it to the printers, and the printers are telling me they can't work with this. Okay. So from a practical perspective, RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue. If you think of monitors or your technology, okay, they start with a light source, and then they have these little elements in them, the red, the green, and the blue, that if you put them together, if you look at your screen right now, that's RGB. If you look at your telephone, that's RGB. All of those technology type stuff where there's screens involved have RGB. It is an additive model. So basically, you start with black, you add your RGB in a different intensities, and if you add them all together, you get white. Okay, so that's an additive model. And if you look at RGB, you have access to something like 16 million different colors. Okay, so you are only limited by your imagination if you work within the RGB realm. Okay, 16 million colors in every shade and variety you can possibly wrap your mind around it. The only thing that could hold you back is the resolution of your actual screen, okay, and the quality of your monitor. Other than that, RGB is this huge playing field that you can go crazy in. The downside to that is RGB isn't necessarily translatable to CMYK. Okay, CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and the K stands for black, okay, which is key. Blue was already taken, so that's why they couldn't make it RGB. They couldn't make it CMYB. They had to make it K. So CMYK is what your physical printers, when they do your leaflets, when they do your printer at home, when you print out your materials, that is CMYK. So it's a physical pigment. It is a subtractive model. So they start with white. When you add all the colors together, you get black. Okay, so that's the difference. Screen versus physical printing. and they don't always translate. Okay, so keep in mind, if you have a very specific brand color and it is a color that you are very attached to and it looks amazing on the screen, you go out and you take your logo to a printer and they print it out, and suddenly your color is not the same. So you have to keep that in mind. Okay. And within the CMYK, you have 16,000 colors. It's still a huge amount. So, but in comparison to 16 million, you are a lot more limited. Okay. And then we have something called PMS, and it's not a girl problem, a female problem. PMS stands for a Pantone matching system. So if you go to any commercial printer or jet line down the road from you, you can have something called a Pantone matching system. So Pantone is a company, it's an international company that specializes in specific colors. So if you think, for example, of Coca-Cola, they've actually trademarked their specific red. Nobody else is allowed to use their red. And it's a PMS, I can't remember, it's 425 or something, 484. PMS 484 is the brand color for Coca-Cola. This type of Pantone reference, okay, is a specific paint that is mixed in a specific way, and doesn't matter whether you're in China or Ghana or Pretoria, it's the same color. Okay, there can be no variations anyway. So a lot of the bigger brands, for example, Coca-Cola, as I said before, but even things like Starbucks, BMW, all of those international brands, they've chosen to have a Pantone color versus CMYK, where you can have variances. So color is really important in adding to your skeleton, okay? But the other tools that are available to us are graphic design principles, because you need to be able to take your design, which includes a logo, includes the color and the font, which I'll talk about the font just now, but you need to be able to have specific principles to make sure that your brand makes sense to people out there, okay? Especially if you're going out on platforms where the information is written down, okay? If you have pamphlets and leaflets, you can't just chuck things on a page and hope for the best, okay? There are specific principles that you need to take into account to try and make something look as aesthetically pleasing as possible. Principles are like balance, okay? Symmetrical elements are more formal. Asymmetrical, like my face today, is asymmetrical. That shows something that is informal, okay? It's casual. Harmony and unity. It shows elements that belong together. So if you have a specific message and you want to emphasize something in particular, you make sure that they are grouped together as a unit versus different separate entities which seem to have nothing to do with each other. So keeping in mind that you want to emphasize something. Contrast. This is particularly important in the colors that you choose. You need to make sure the platforms that you're going to be using, that there's enough contrast, that something is legible. If you're using something monochromatic and everything looks the same, people are going to be bored to tears. You need something to pop, to keep people's interest, to make sure that they are able to hook onto the concept of the message that you're trying to convey. Hierarchy. Hierarchy is important when you have a lot of information. All of it is important, but you've got to somehow make sure that people understand your core message, and then there's filler information that goes with that. Emphasis. You can use color to emphasize something in particular versus the body of information. But you want this to pop, and this is important. The rest is information that you can read in your own time, but this you need to focus on and pay attention. I think the same when you guys are out there speaking to people. You have a core message that you will emphasize, and then you add flesh to that to give them more information. Repetition. Repetition really is helpful if you need to make sure that people understand your core branding. So you're going to use the repetition throughout your platforms, okay? Whether you're using Instagram, whether you're printing a flyer or your business card. You repeat the same information that is core to what you're wanting your target audience to understand. Negative space. As a graphic designer, I really think that people don't use enough white space or negative space around the information, especially I'm talking about printing now. A lot of amateurs have a lot of information that they want to give out to people. So they jam pack all the information that they possibly can into the space, for example, on a leaflet. People find that overwhelming. They need breathing room. So the same with your designs. You need to have space, and then you use all these principles, the emphasis and the balance and the unity, to try and make it as interesting and as appealing as possible to keep people's attention. The same as when you're a speaker. When you're standing out there and you're talking in a monotone and you're talking like this, the same people are going to get bored and they're not going to listen to you. They're going to fall asleep. So it's the same type of principle, using all of these elements together to try and make your information as interesting as possible. Proportion, all of those type of things are important. They're all in the document that gives you more information. But it gives you an idea that it's quite complex. It's not just simply sitting in front of Canva, chucking a couple of cute elements together and hoping for the best, okay? It needs some thought. It needs some investigation in self as to what you want to communicate, and to do it well versus, oh, this is amateur. If your information and your way of speaking comes across as an amateur, your audience is not going to have any confidence in you or your brand. So it's really important to have a well-rounded package that you're able to present to them that ticks all the boxes of professionalism, authenticity, and interest. Okay. So we've basically now we've put together our skeleton. We've now clothed our skeleton, and the analogy I'm going to use is, you've decided you're going to be a bright red luscious strawberry. That's your brand, is this juicy fat strawberry. How do we enhance that? Well, we add whipped cream. Okay, and the whipped cream for this is your typography, your fonts. And I get very excited about fonts because fonts are just amazing, and there's so many out there that are available. So your color is your lush strawberry, but then we go in and we enhance it when we make it really interesting. And the type of font that you choose has a huge impact. Again, it is the message without words. Different fonts have a different personality. If you think of somebody, a big brand like Nike or BMW, if you take their brands and you suddenly add a twirly, cursive-y, flourishy font to them, is it Nike anymore? Is it BMW anymore? No, because it takes away from the personality of that brand. So adding a font is your whipped cream. And there are so many fonts out there that will add to the color, will add to the brand that you are trying to communicate because of the personality that will come out then with your typography. If you look at the body of the typography, you get serif fonts. They've been around for hundreds of years. So a serif, if you can imagine, imagine a T. It's the little wings that they add at the end of the T, okay? It's those little wings that they add at the bottom of the I and the little flourish at the end of the A's, okay? They used to do that in the Middle Ages when they started with printing. It just gave that blocky feel. It made the fonts look like it's legible, okay? Sans serif literally means without the serif. So it's all your fonts. They tend to be less formal. They tend to be your more informal type fonts. When you're choosing a font, in graphic design, we have a 2-font rule. Okay. Just like when you choose your colors, you're not going to do a whole rainbow of colors. You're going to specify 2 or 3 colors to make your brand consistent. You have the 2-font rule. Anything more in your on your website, in your leaflets, it suddenly becomes extremely busy. It doesn't hold people's interest. Okay. You have what we call a font family. Rather investigate and commit to a font family. Just a bog standard one is Calibri or Arial. Within those fonts, they'll have a regular, they'll have a thin font, they'll have a heading font, they will have a extra bold, a bold, an italic. All of these type of sub-brands underneath your fonts that help you within a document add emphasis to specific points that you might need. Okay, so don't use more than 2 fonts and try and invest in a font family. Shapes. Just checking the time. I need to start talking faster. Shapes. We are surrounded by shapes. Okay. Every day we look around, lots of brands use shapes as part of their logos. Okay. Again, it is part of your branding. It's a tool. You've done the color, you've done the font. What do you add to that? Okay. Shapes help bring a cohesive entity to bring all of these things together to make a branding. Okay. If you think of circles, ovals, ellipses, generally they communicate unity, connection, motion. Think of Audi. Audi with all the circles that are interlinking. It shows progress, it shows movement. Think of Burger King. It kind of brings together that you're going to have a nice round fat juicy burger that you can bite into. So it's part of their logo. It just kind of brings everything together. Spirals are often seen as something that indicates progress, growth, movement. You start small and you start growing bigger and bigger and bigger. So that kind of innate understanding of what the symbol means adds to the message that you're already trying to communicate. Okay. Squares and rectangles, they are used a lot because they show the basic foundation, the building blocks of our designs. It shows security, it shows order, it shows efficiency. I mean, if you think of logos like YouTube, Instagram, that kind of brings that all together and shows you we're very efficient. This is all contained in this building block, and this is the message that we are sending out. Triangles. Triangles, direction, adventure, stability. You innately understand the subconscious message that they are trying to give you. Natural shapes. These can be shells, these can be animals, flowers, all of those type of natural elements that represent what they are. For example, if you think of the Puma brand, they've got the leaping puma on the side. You immediately understand that Puma is communicating aggressive, competitive, motion, strong. It's inherent. They don't even need to say the word Puma next to it. Just the symbolism of the cat as part of their logo embodies what they are trying to communicate. Icons. This often gets used in infographics. It takes a relatively complex principle and distills it down into something that is very stylized. For example, a heart. We all associate a heart with love. It's basic. We all have that connotation. A dragon. It could mean power. It could mean dominance. So whatever icons you use adds to the message and the brand. In infographics specifically, we use that if we're trying to communicate a lot of complex information, distill it down to its bare essence. So, for example, a pencil could mean so many things that are quite complex. It's trying to give information. It shows learning. It shows communication. It shows sharing of information. So you can, part of your brand, incorporate icons that show and distill your corporate message. Last stretch. Cohesive branding is essential. You need to make sure that across all the platforms that you are sharing your message, that it is all consistent and authentic. Just for example, is your bio photo the same on Instagram as it is on LinkedIn? And is the photo you're using the pretty photo you had of high school when you had a full head of hair and you were skinny? Okay. Or is it the photo of you right now? Because you need to make sure that your consumers or your audience can recognize who you are. If you're trying to give a message of authenticity and honesty, and they look at your bio photo and it's you in high school when you were skinny, and then they meet you in person and suddenly it doesn't line up, you've already lost your audience because they're not going to believe that you're authentic and honest. So your branding and your message has to be consistent throughout. However, you need to understand that every platform has different limitations as well as different scopes that you need to tap into and utilize. Twitter, for example, is concise and it's great for short, real-time engagement. Okay. Instagram is great if you have a lot of visuals that you need to share and videos that you can motion. Okay. Facebook, generally, I suppose that's more of a jack of all trades. It tends to be able to tap into a lot of different aspects of your message that you can share. LinkedIn is kind of the more formal boardroom of information. Okay, so the expectancy there is it's going to be more formal, more business orientated. And you need to be able to bring them all together and make sure that the information that you are sending out there is concise. To help you do that, it is good to be able to develop a brand guideline. So you have a basic information sheet that you can share with, if you've got a new freelance graphic designer that's going to be coming in, they need to understand, this is my brand, these are the colors that I use, these are the fonts I use, these are the symbols I use. Or if you have a new employee that is starting with your company, they need to be able to tap into your brand guidelines and go, oh, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is what we are trying to communicate. And these elements add to that. So even if they've never read anything about you, they know nothing about you, your brand guidelines are there as an instant check, 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 check. Yes, I understand who you are and I'm buying into your image, your brand, your message that you are sending out there. And then do a brand audit. Go sit down and go and look across the board in all the platforms that you are being represented in. What is the quality like? Okay. Is it consistent and is it relevant? Maybe what you started off with as 5 years ago, all rah, 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 has changed, but you haven't updated the information that is out there. You need to make sure that it is relevant and current. And why do we do all of this? For a couple of reasons. First of all, brand recognition. The more the information is out there and the more consistent and professional it looks, people will remember you, okay? It builds trust. People will trust you if they see that you have the same message throughout, okay? It gives credibility and professionalism. And bottom line is clarity of message. Your foundation, your skeleton is at your foundation of everything. And does that come across throughout? Doesn't matter where you are, whether you are speaking in China or Pretoria. It's the same message. Your skeleton is the same. We just emphasize it by adding the whipped cream and the strawberries. And I think that's me. Sure.
Luzonne, thank you so much. That's a bunch of information that you have poured into us. So yeah, thank you so much and well done. Well thought out. I made half a page of notes of stuff that I need to go back and look at. For everyone else, there is the ebook in the chat as well as Luzonne's contact information. Please go and connect with her on LinkedIn, and please go leave a recommendation as definitely the best dressed presenter ever on a Zoom call. So please go and do that. And if you have any design queries, questions, or concerns, then you've got a one-stop shop right here. So that's great. Hopefully we won't keep you too busy and away from your 4 kids. But maybe you want to, so we'll see.
Yes.
That's great. Lovely. Thank you very much. An hour well spent. Thank you for those who have hung in there. We had a couple of people who had to leave. We will be sending out an email in the next couple of hours. Charlotte is nodding, with the ebook as well as the link to the LinkedIn workshop. And it's not your traditional Charlotte LinkedIn workshop next month. Just to tell you, if you've already been on that one, you want to come on this one because we've upped it a notch and we've refocused a little bit on what is happening with LinkedIn at the moment, especially for speakers and especially to get you connected around certain brands. So go and get your photographs and your icons and everything ready, because next month then we're going to take that to your next level to, I don't know, place you in the right spot under that spotlight for this year. So thank you very much to Charlotte and Njajeka from the team from Voices into Africa. Please go and look at our website, go look at all the other future stuff, earmark these pages. And thank you very much for being with us. And especially a big thank you and a hug to Luzonne for an amazing, informative brain download of colors. I've learned a whole bunch. I'm surprised. I'm going to go play with that color wheel now. And go and look at all sorts of things. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise. It is highly appreciated.